All right, let's talk about a pretty staggering problem in India. Almost half of all college graduates are considered unemployable. Yeah, you heard that right. It's this huge, huge challenge. And it all comes down to a massive gap between what students are learning in school and what they actually need to know to get a job. So, in today's explainer, we're going to dive into one company, Shunya Setu, and their really fascinating approach to fixing this whole mess.
So, how do things get this bad? And more importantly, what's the solution? Well, here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to really dig into that skills gap. Then, we'll look at a massive policy change that kind of blew the doors open for innovation. After that, we'll see how Shunya Sehu jumped on this opportunity. We'll break down their super clever business model. And then, we'll wrap up by looking at their big, ambitious vision for the future.
Okay, so first things first. To really get why a company like Shunya Setu even exists, you gotta understand the problem they're trying to solve. You see, for years, India's economy has been just exploding, right? But the education system, it's been kind of stuck in the past, struggling to keep up. And that's created this huge, huge disconnect.
And here it is, the number that says it all, 47%. Just let that sink in for a second. According to the India Skills Report, nearly half of all graduates in India are considered unemployable. I mean, think about that. They do all the work, they get the degree, but they walk out without the practical, hands-on skills that companies are literally begging for.
So, what's the root of the problem? Well, here it is, straight from the source. The system is just largely theoretical. It's all about memorizing facts for an exam, not actually applying that knowledge. And that, right there, is the fundamental problem. It creates this giant canyon between what's happening in the classroom and what's actually needed out in the real world, in a real job. And this isn't just one single thing going wrong. It's a total vicious cycle. Think about it. Schools don't have the modern labs for hands-on stuff. Because of that, teachers don't get trained in new tech like AI or robotics. And since there's almost no collaboration with actual industries, students just end up graduating with a head full of theory but zero job readiness. It just feeds itself over and over. But then, in 2020, something massive happened. The whole landscape just shifted. The Indian government dropped this landmark policy that was specifically designed to break that vicious cycle. And in doing so, it created the perfect storm, a perfect opening for a whole new kind of solution to step in. It's called the National Education Policy, or NEP 2020 for short. And let me be clear, this wasn't just some small update or a minor tweak. No, this was a complete top-to-bottom overhaul. It was a direct order, a mandate for every single school in the country to get with the times and modernize. So what was at the heart of this new policy? Well, it was all about a huge shift. A shift away from just memorizing stuff and towards critical thinking and actually learning by doing. And it wasn't vague either. It specifically called for schools to start teaching skills like coding, AI, and robotics. Okay, but this created a brand new, massive problem, right? The government basically said, here's what you need to do. But for over 1.5 million schools, the big question was how? How are we supposed to do this? They didn't have the labs, they didn't have the right curriculum, and they sure didn't have the teachers trained to make any of it happen. And this is the exact moment our protagonist enters the story. This is the gap that Shunya Setu was built to fill. In fact, their name literally translates to Zero Bridge. And that pretty much sums up their whole mission. To build a bridge for schools, to get them from where they are to where they desperately need to be. Their mission sounds simple, but it's incredibly ambitious. They want to make advanced STEM learning, the labs, the curriculum, all of it, accessible to every single school and college in India. They call this bridging the 0 to 1 gap. And what that really means is taking students from being passive learners, just sitting and listening, to being active creators and innovators. And I mean, the contrast couldn't be more clear, right? On one hand, you have the old traditional system, all theory, totally disconnected from the real world. And on the other hand, you have the Shunya Setu approach, which is the complete opposite. It's all about hands-on experience, it's perfectly aligned with that new government policy, and it's laser-focused on one thing: making students ready for a job. So how do they actually do all this? Well, they provide a complete, what's called a turnkey solution. It's the whole shebang. They don't just, drop off a box of equipment and say, good luck. No, they set up the entire lab. They provide the curriculum for every grade. They train the teachers. They give you a learning platform with an AI mentor. They even help out with competitions and student job placements. It's truly an end-to-end service. And here's what makes this so powerful for the schools themselves. Shunya Setu makes it easy. They have this super clear step-by-step roadmap, and it takes a school from just signing on the dotted line to having a fully functional, state-of-the-art innovation lab in just 12 weeks. That's it.
Okay, but let's talk about the money, because that's always the big question, right? How can a small rural government school possibly afford the same kind of advanced technology as some fancy elite private school? Well, this is where their business model gets really, really clever.
See, instead of forcing everyone into one high-cost option, they give schools a choice. Option 1, you can buy the lab outright, but that's a huge upfront cost, a massive capital expense that most schools just don't have. Or there's option 2, you can subscribe. And the subscription model is the real game changer. It bundles everything, the lab itself, the teacher training, all the maintenance, and this is the key part, all future upgrades into one predictable, affordable annual fee. And get this, that annual fee breaks down to just 3,000 rupees per student per year. Okay, so what does that even mean? That's about 250 rupees a month. We're talking less than the cost of a few cups of coffee for access to world-class robotics, AI, and STEM education. This is what makes it so incredibly affordable for pretty much any school out there. But maybe the most powerful part of this subscription model is the built-in 5-year upgrade plan. Think of it as future-proofing. Every single year, the lab gets a major tech upgrade. So you start with core STEM, then it evolves to robotics and IoT, then VR/AR, all the way to a full-blown metaverse lab by the 5th year. This is absolutely huge because it means schools never have to worry about their expensive new lab becoming obsolete in a couple of years. All right, so we've established they have a fantastic product and a really smart, accessible business model. But the big question remains. How do you actually reach all 1.5 million of those schools? So now, let's take a look at their strategy for scaling this whole thing up.
Their growth is powered by a really clever mix of different income streams. So yeah, paid private schools are the core of their business, but a really big chunk of their revenue actually comes from what's called corporate social responsibility, or CSR projects. This is where big companies use their funds to give back, and Shunya Setu partners with them. This is the key that allows them to install these amazing labs in government and rural schools, the very schools that could never afford it on their own.
And to grow really, really fast, they use a model that's kind of like a franchise system. They bring on what they call city directors. These are local partners who get the exclusive rights to operate in their city or region. This basically empowers local entrepreneurs to go out and make the deals, which lets Shunya Setu scale up way, way faster than if they try to do it all themselves from a central office. And this model, it loops right back to their commitment to making a real social impact. By actively working with those corporate CSR programs and with government bodies, what they're really building is a public-private partnership. The ultimate goal here is to make sure this amazing technology doesn't get trapped in wealthy city schools. It's about pushing it out and making sure it reaches the most remote and underserved students across the entire country. So when you look at the whole picture, their ambition is way bigger than just being another vendor selling stuff to schools. They see themselves as a national force multiplier. What does that mean? It means they want to be a key strategic partner that helps the government actually pull off the massive, ambitious vision of that national education policy.
So by putting together a solution that schools desperately need with a business model that actually works and can scale, Shunya Setu is doing so much more than just building labs. You know, they're building a potential bridge to the future for millions and millions of students. And that really leaves us with one powerful final question. Could this be the model that finally, truly bridges the skills gap for an